Thanks for allowing us to come today. I'm going to take about 20 minutes here and just talk about something super important that has happened in Crandall ISD, and it's kind of a monumental, once-in-a-lifetime event, and so I want to make sure that I get to every campus and have the opportunity to tell everybody in a face-to-face opportunity what is happening. So I'm going to teach you School Finance 101 today. School Finance is a 30-hour course that you take in your master's class, but I'm going to give it to you in about 2 minutes today, okay? So a very high level of school finance. But school finance, Texas school funding in Texas is broken down into basically two buckets of money, and the buckets can't cross, they can't mix. So you can't take one bucket and use it to fill up another bucket or vice versa. So the two buckets are completely separate, and I have them illustrated behind me in gray and in yellow. And so the yellow bucket is what we call, when I say it fast, it sounds like I'm saying my alphabet, M and O. M and O stands for maintenance and operations. So the yellow bucket of school finance is like what you would think in your house of your checking account, your day-to-day operations. How we pay salaries, how we pay our gas bill, how we pay our insurance, how we function on a day-to-day basis. All of that money is in the yellow maintenance and operations bucket. And then you have this gray bucket, and the gray bucket is called INS, or I and S, and that stands for interest and sinking. And the interest and sinking bucket pays for all of the capital projects, like building new buildings, painting your hallways that happen this summer, putting new air conditioners on Martin Elementary, the new wing that we're building at the high school, the Performing Arts Center that's coming. So everything in gray is around capital projects and building projects, okay? So for the history of Crandall ISD, every time that we've gone and asked the voters to approve additional funds, it has always been about the gray bucket. It's always been, can we buy more, can we build more schools, can we add on, can we do those capital projects? And so for the first time in Crandall ISD's history, we're asking our voters to approve putting more money in the yellow bucket, to put more money towards our maintenance and operations. So what you need to know about the yellow bucket is that in most school districts, somewhere between 80 to 85% of the bucket of that, if you think of it in terms of percentage, goes towards salaries. Okay, in Crandall ISD, 82% of our operating budget goes towards salaries. Everyone's salary, from cafeteria, bus driver, teacher, paraprofessional, principal, superintendent, like we all are paid out of the yellow bucket. So for the first time, when we ask voters to approve more money going into the yellow bucket, that's going to help our salaries. Okay, that money, 82% of it, is moving towards helping our salaries. All right, any questions about school finance? That's it. Yellow bucket, gray bucket. Today, I want to spend all of our time talking about the yellow bucket. I want you to kind of forget that the gray bucket exists for a little bit, and we're only going to talk about the maintenance and operations budget, okay? So there's a gap in school funding across the state of Texas, and we call it the school funding gap. And so what's happened is the state legislature has appropriated no new money for schools since 2019. So we're operating schools with a budget that was given to us in 2019. And yet, inflation is at its very highest since 1981. So if the money has stayed the same, but the inflation has gone up, it creates this gap, right? You all feel that in your house as well. Inflation versus what's coming in, things haven't changed. And so in Crandall ISD, we've done several things to try to ease this gap or make this gap as small as possible. First of all, we've reduced our budgets. You've heard your principal talk about, well, they cut our budget or they took money away from us. Well, we did. We reduced everyone's budget. We haven't filled some positions that were originally there because we're trying to save money. We've also improved attendance. This is one of the reasons that they hound you about your attendance every day and making sure that we have every kid here, because school districts get paid through attendance. And so we've increased our attendance, but not enough to really close that gap to the level it needs to be narrowed to. And so for the first time in the history of Crandall, probably, I don't know actually if it's the whole history, but for the last 25 years, that's the last superintendent I could get to, we are passing a deficit budget for the first time of about $1.5 million. And so what that is in your house would be like if you're going to pay the electricity bill out of your savings account, that wouldn't be a good plan, would it? Because eventually what's going to happen? Your savings account is going to run out. So this is not a lifelong sustainable plan for us. We can't continue to live out of our savings account or out of our fund balance. Right now, we have about $21 million in our fund balance, and the law requires that we have a 3 months operating expense. So for us, we've got about 3.5 months of operating expense saved up in case something were to happen. Everybody would know we have 3.5 months to be able to pay the salaries, to pay the bills, to do all those things before something really tragic happened. So I want to be really, really clear. This isn't because we didn't spend the money well or because we were frivolous and just throwing money out the door. This is a state of Texas problem. So behind me you see this article. It was from Channel 8 and it came out on August the 7th, and it was just a news report about how many North Texas in this case, school districts are experiencing the same thing that's happening in Crandall, experiencing this school finance gap. This is a lot of words on a page, but what I want you to see is that each line is a school district and the red number beside it is the deficit that they're passing this year. So for Crandall ISD to only be passing a deficit of 1.5 million, we're in a lot better shape than some places, but we're still not going to be able to survive if we don't do something. So we know that research has said, and you know this, you live it every day, that the single most critical factor to student success is a teacher, or is the adult in the classroom, or is the paras that work with them every day. The people who actually talk to the children are the ones who make the difference, right? You can all agree that that is factual based on your experience, but it's also research driven. And so we know that if we're expecting this school district to get better and to get better faster, the one way that we have to do that is through our people. And so we have this critical need. We're already living out of our fund balance, and our board took kind of this leap of faith. They knew that we had to do something to pay teachers. So we gave a very small raise, the most that we could right now because we were taking it out of our savings account. So we gave a raise this year, but it's coming out of our savings account because we know that we need to retain the staff that we have, the amazing staff. We need to recruit new, because I don't know if you noticed, but we're growing and we have a few extra friends joining us these days. We also need to improve curriculum resources. Our accountability scores weren't where we wanted them to be, and so we've got to put some money towards that. And then Keith and Eric do a fabulous job maintaining the safety and security, but those things cost money, right? Like putting the window film and adding the fences and doing all of those things cost money, and so we need to be able to maintain those things. So with these 4 areas, we've got to do something to add more money to that. So this is currently where we are. It's a lot of words on the screen, so I'll kind of move out of your way. But what you see on this graph on your left is a starting teacher salary. So this is exponential. So like this is 0-year teacher, but the same type of thing would be similar at a 10-year or a 20-year teacher. There's a gap in what Crandall ISD pays and all of our closest friends. Mesquite and Garland and Forney have already passed this tax selection. So they're already having more money in their yellow bucket to pay teachers than what Crandall ISD does. And so if I'm a new teacher, and we're talking about the recruiting of people, I'm probably less likely to pick Crandall than I am some other places if I'm just after the dollar, right? But when you talk about how it goes through the scale, we have to retain the teachers that we get. And right now, this is the average number of years of experience in our district, because our experienced teachers also, what's true over here about this gap is also true at 5-year, 10-year, 15 years down the scale. Does that make sense? Now, Forney is a little bit of an anomaly here because they're opening a school every other year, or they opened 2 schools this school year, and so they're having to hire a whole lot more new staff. So that makes that number look a little bit odd, but you can see the trend. So in school finance, there's only 3 ways to get more money in Texas public school finance. The first one is to hope that the legislature does something. Well, in Crandall ISD America, hope is not a plan. I would like for it to be a great plan, but I just don't have a lot of faith that our legislatures are going to do something in our favor. And so we can't depend on bullet number 1. Bullet number 2 is improve attendance rate, because all of our all of our funding is around the percentage of our students that attend school. And we're doing that. We're working on attendance, and that's why you get hounded every day, because this is how it affects the money, which affects the yellow bucket, which affects your paycheck, right? The last thing, the only other way to get better or to get more money is to ask voters to approve a tax increase. And so that's what we're going to be asking our voters to do. And so in November, our board has called for an election, and there's a lot of words on the screen, so let me just tell you what they say. They say basically we're asking our taxpayers to raise taxes so that we can improve salaries, we can provide curriculum resources, and we can maintain great safety and security. Okay? I want to talk a little bit about taxes in Crandall ISD because I think this is important context. Before we're asking to raise taxes, you need to know what has happened over the last few years. So on the left in 2018, you'll see that our tax rate was $1.54. And since then, in 2023, last year, our tax rate was at $1.16. So we've reduced the tax rate 37 cents since 2018. And the first question people say is, well, why did you do that? If you're just going to have to turn around and ask me for money, why did you reduce it? Well, we didn't actually do that. That's the state. The state has lowered the amount of money that school districts can get when they provide tax breaks to our citizens. You've heard about the $100,000 homestead exemption. Over the years, there have been multiple exemptions that have come and that can continue to reduce the amount of taxes that school districts are allowed to take. And so we've reduced it 37 cents, but we're asking taxpayers to add 12 cents back per dollar, per $100 back into their taxes for schools, still leaving them at 25 cents lower than they were in 2018. So what that means for the average homeowner in Crandall ISD, not Crandall, not just the city of Crandall, this includes Heartland Combine, anybody who sends their children to Crandall ISD. What that means is it's basically $36 a month. That's what we're asking homeowners to do, is basically increase taxes by about $36 per month. I do need to point out really quickly that if you or someone that you know is over the age of 65, their taxes are frozen. They still get to vote yes or no in this election, but nothing that we do can ever raise their taxes. The only thing that can happen is the state legislature lower their taxes and they would have a reduced rate. But anybody that's over the age of 65, regardless of how they vote or anyone else votes, won't be affected by this. And so I just want to make that caveat really clear. So Proposition A, this is, you'll begin to see this graphic around, but Prop A is what we're calling it. Proposition A, if passed, that 12 cents will equal about $6 million more dollars into our yellow bucket. So $6 million more dollars towards salaries, improved curriculum resources, and safety and security. $3.5 million of that comes from the state. They match a certain percentage of our money at the state level. So the state would give us, if local taxpayers approve 12-cent increase, the state will provide $3.5 million to us. The local tax contribution would equal $2.5 million. And so out of those two together, there will be about $6 million added to our annual budget. In Crandall ISD, as I've said, 82% of our current budget goes towards salaries. So when we put $6 million more, 82% of that goes towards salaries. So the first question that I always get asked is, well, how much does that mean for me? Like, how much is my raise going to be? And I would love to be able to give you a very specific number, but it's contingent upon a couple of things. We've already talked about attendance. Like if our attendance rate drops, it's going to be less than $6 million. If our attendance rate goes up, it's going to be more than $6 million. In addition, we have all of these different pay scales. You have a pay scale for paraprofessionals, you have a pay scale for cafeteria workers, you have a pay scale for bus drivers, you have a pay scale for teachers. And so everybody's scale is a little bit, or in some cases, greatly out of whack when you talk about the average or our competition. And so our goal is that everybody, number one, will see a significant raise regardless of which pay scale you're on. It will just differ a little bit depending on where you are. So I will tell you, our paraprofessionals, when you look at the standard across all of those districts that you compare us with, they are more significantly behind than our teacher salary. And so we have to do something to kind of bump that paraprofessional scale a little bit more, but we want to make all of our salaries competitive, okay? So I can't give you an exact number today, A lot of it's going to depend on what our attendance rate shakes out to be and so forth. But what you can do the math, 6 million, take 82% of that, that goes towards salaries now. So you can kind of think about it in those terms. So passing this tax selection would be able to do three things: provide competitive salaries, that's our goal, be competitive at every area. It would provide us curriculum resources, and it would maintain our excellent security. The state provides the language that we're going to use for the ballot. It is very, I don't get to change it, I don't get to add to it, I don't get to stand outside and explain it. This is what the law says that has to go on the ballot. Ratifying the ad valorem tax rate of $1.2869 per $100 evaluation in Crandall Independent School District for the current year, a rate that will result in an increase of 24.74% in the maintenance and operations tax revenue for the district for the current year as compared to the preceding year, which is an additional $5,834,282. If you just saw that on the ballot, would you have any idea what it was asking? Probably not. So that's how come I want to make sure that you understand what the ballot language is. So here's what we're asking. Number one is that you become educated. Be involved, ask questions, share this information, make sure that you're helping other people become educated on what the issues are. Ask questions for clarity. School finance is super complicated. When you add politics on top of that, it gets a lot more complicated. So please ask questions for clarity. And then, of course, if you choose to vote yes or no in this subject, we're just asking that you go out and vote. So speaking of that, I just want to remind you that this is an election year, not just for our issue of Prop A, but it's also, I don't know if you know, a presidential election, and things are also a tad bit emotional over there on that side of the world. And so I just want to remind everyone in Crandall ISD what our rights and responsibilities are as employees of a school district. Number one, you can share your political views, but they have to be done during your personal time. So I would go so far as to say from 7 to 5 o'clock, I would refrain from posting how you feel about this topic or any other political topic, okay? Also, you can't use district equipment. So everyone in the room was given a district laptop or a district Chromebook of some sort. If you take that home and you start firing off your opinions after 5 o'clock, you've met criteria 1, but you've missed criteria 2. You can't use our resources to share your opinion. Most of you have a phone, so feel free. But also, we want to make sure that you remember that you represent Crandall ISD at all times. So when you choose to express your political opinions, just please do it in such a way that is respectful of all people so that we are representing our school district well.